Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're so happy to be here with Derek and Aaron. So, Derek is the Moonbeam founder, and Aaron is from the Moonbeam Foundation. So, guys, I'll give you some time to also make your intros.
Yeah, cool. I mean, Aaron, you wanna maybe go first, since
Sure.
I think you maybe people know me already a little bit, but maybe not you. So
Yeah, I'm sure I'm sort of a new face for many of you. So yeah, I'm Aaron Evans. I'm director of the Moonbeam Foundation. It's a nonprofit based in Singapore, and the purpose of the foundation is to foster the long-term development ecosystem and health of the network.
yeah, so I think I know that for a lot of you, you've probably seen mostly like PureStake, right? So like a lot of the folks you've interacted with, including Katie, are from PureStake, but for us, like this was an important thing, that for the network, right, is to have kind of this like long-term nonprofit foundation that would be kind of stewarding kind of like the network, because we really have this pretty long-term view of Moonbeam and Moonriver as networks, and that they're going to be around for a long time. So we felt that was a kind of an important thing.
It's a pretty common thing with major projects in the space, I think, right? So
yeah. And you guys know me, so obviously I'm Derek Yoo, CEO of PureStake, and I've been working on, as you know, on Moonbeam and Moonriver, for quite some time, and I think it's pretty exciting. We're getting now to showtime, I guess, for for the first of our production value bearing networks in Moonriver. So I'm sure we can talk a bit more about that in some of the questions, but a lot of focus right now from the team is on just getting kind of ready for the launch of Moonriver from a tech perspective, and from a variety of other perspectives, operational perspectives. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Derek and Aaron. And I'm Kathy. I know that you all guys know me already, jumping in Discord and talking with the ambassador. So we're very happy to have you here today. So this AMA is going to be focused, like Derek said, our focus right now is on in Moonriver and the Crowdloan. So let's start with some warm-up questions that will define the term Crowdloan and also Moonriver. So guys, can you explain what is a Crowdloan, and is it the same as LBP, liquidity bootstrapping pool?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll start. Yeah, I mean, not really similar to an LBP. A crowd loan is really a way. I mean, as many of you know, we have to win an auction to get a parachain slot on Kusama, as well as we will eventually to get on the Polkadot ecosystem. And so to do that, we have to win an auction, which we'll need to have a bunch of KSM in order to win that auction. So a crowd loan is a way for us to, in a way, get the support we need to win that auction. It also demonstrates broad support from the ecosystem, which is also a really vote of confidence for the Moonbeam project. It is not really a loan. So the Moonbeam Foundation or PureStake will never be in possession of the KSM that comes through the crowd loan. It goes into a special account for the specific parachain that we're trying to establish. And so we'll never be in possession of it. It's locked, by that special module, which is this is parity software within the Kusama platform. It's a module within there, and of course similar on Polkadot. And so it's locked there, right, until we either, if we're not successful with an auction, which I don't think will be the case, or it'll be locked for the lease period, which we're attempting to get a 48-week lease. So Derek, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great explanation. I think it's a novel mechanism, right? So like I think this is like the first time that something like this is being done, like as these roll out like on Kusama, and with real value, let's call it. So I think that's pretty interesting to see how this plays out. I think it's some of the points of confusion, and I might be jumping ahead to other questions, but I think some people are getting a little bit confused by the difference between a crowd loan and an auction, right? So like you have this auction mechanism that's being used to allocate like the parachain slots on the relay chains on the Kusama relay chain, but you can actually bid without a crowd loan, right? So if you just let's say you were a KSM whale, you had like a whole bunch of KSM, you could be like, what, I don't need like some kind of community support thing. I just like have enough myself, and then you could just do a direct bid basically on the auction. So there's kind of this auction mechanism which is totally independent and could be the case that there's just some single like account that has enough KSM in it to like win a that auction. Then you have layered on top of it this like crowd loan functionality, which is okay. This crowd loan functionality is a way so that there's like many contributors that can kind of sum themselves together into like one like bid that would then put their hat in the ring basically for a given auction. So I think that sometimes people get confused between those two. You can actually have you can't have a crowd loan without an auction, but you can have an auction without a crowd loan. I guess I'd put it that way.
Yeah, and I guess the other important thing that I didn't touch on earlier is that there are rewards, but it's not actually tied directly to that loan or really locking that KSM. So that's kind of handled by the parity module. The rewards, it's up to each individual project to decide how they want to reward the people who lock up their KSM. I mean, it's really kind of optional, but you can imagine most projects would provide an incentive for people to lock up their KSM. And so, the reward we're doing, of course, is in the form of the Moonriver token. And I think there's some more, we'll probably get into more of the details of that a little later, but it's important to understand that those things are kind of separate and handled a little differently.
Yeah, there's a connection because obviously the data like coming from the data related to the contributors and the amounts serves as an input into what is typically going to be like a team implemented like rewards function. So just to give as an example, like our the V8 release that kind of is our kind of final feature release before Moonriver. And one of the components in there is like a rewards palette. So I think you're going to see a lot of these parachain teams will have a rewards palette like in their chain that defines like what the crowd loan like rewards look like basically. So sorry, I think we're kind of going down a tangent. Go ahead, Kathy.
Yeah, I think that you guys already responded a couple of questions around here, but okay, so let's go to the next one. That is, what happens if the project do not win a parachain action? So I want to split this question into parts. What would happen with the parachain, but what also would happen with the tokens that the user that is supporting the parachain used in the crowd loan?
Yeah, right. So why don't I jump in first, Eric?
Sure,
so basically. Sure. Yeah, there's a few different scenarios here. So, there's a concept of having a crowd loan campaign, right? So a campaign is basically, hey, like that's us saying like we want to like start a crowd loan, and here's like the duration of time that it's going to kind of last. And so we'll be firing up, this campaign, which actually go across, several of the first, multiple of the first slots that are going to become available. When you contribute to one of these crowd loans, your funds are going to be locked for the duration of that campaign. So I think many teams are going to be doing a campaign across. There's going to be an initial 5 parachain slots that are going to be released initially, one spaced 1 week apart. So there's kind of an initial 5-week period, I think, and that's I think a lot of teams are going to be running campaigns across some or all of those like these first 5 slots. So when you contribute like to a crowd loan campaign, your funds are locked for the duration of that campaign. And then there's 2 outcomes, right? So like one outcome is that the team wins one of those auctions, in which case your contribution rolls then into like this 48-week slot occupancy in our case. I think almost all the teams I've looked at are going for the full 48 weeks. It's the maximum amount of time that you can have on Kusama. The other scenario is that the team is unsuccessful in winning any of those like slots, and the campaign ends. In that case, as a contributor, you can just reclaim like your funds basically. So after the campaign is over, you reclaim.
Perfect. Okay, so Aaron, I don't know if you want to add something here.
No, I think Derek laid it out pretty well. So and I think let's say you set up a campaign for the first, that's going to be a duration that's going to cover the first 5 auctions, and the campaign ends and we weren't to secure one, we can always start another one, but hopefully that won't be the case.
Yeah. I think, and that's details, when you're looking at someone's, at contributing, then obviously you may be looking at even projects other than ours, but like these are kind of details that are important to say like, okay, there's a campaign. What is the duration of the campaign basically, right? And so that'll be, one of the important parameters to understand about a project's, crowd loan.
Correct. Perfect. So let's talk a little bit more about Moonriver. Just to put some context here, Moonriver is the Moonbeam deployment to Kusama, that is the sister network of Moonbeam. Our community is asking, like, why do we have 2 networks? Why are we deploying to Kusama first?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, and I'm sure, Derek, chime in with anything that it kind of missed, but it's a pretty cool idea because making a canary network of sorts where we can test the latest code first, but also with real economic conditions, because you don't really get that with a test net if you just have sort of a faucet that's unlimited. It's kind of like playing poker where the chips have no value, right? I mean, you're not really, it's not like a real game. So this way we get to deploy the latest code first, before it kind of graduates to the sort of quote unquote production environment. So Derek, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely right, and I think, I've spoken with some of the parity people who came up with the idea in the first place, and I think it was born. The whole idea for Kusama was born of this idea that, like, hey, we need a place where we can deploy, our software that has like real conditions in it, because there's some things that are just not possible to test without like real conditions. So the examples I was given at the time were things like governance. Like, no one cares about like the governance of a test chain, of a test net, because there's nothing at stake, right? So like you just like get zero engagement. Like no one like even bothers to like do anything like in the governance modules. I think the same is true of a lot of the the kind of node running kind of activities, right? But I get I have like I think I've evolved my thinking on this like a bit. So yes, on the one hand, it's it's this environment that you can deploy to that has real conditions. But maybe the interesting question is like, well, why is that important? Like, what is it? What is it that you get? And so I think for me, like one of the things that you get, and one of the things that I think that is special about even more broadly about Substrate and Polkadot is you get kind of like this combination of quality and like velocity, right? So I don't know, Aaron and like myself both came from kind of non-blockchain kind of software development backgrounds, and I'll tell you that like in like Web 2, like people are deploying like a lot more often, right? You have like rapid deployments happening all the time, and you have like very quick iterations and kind of adjustments as like market conditions are changing. That's like not how blockchain usually works, right? In blockchain, you have like a release a year maybe or something, and then it's like this nail biter of okay, we have this release, and like so I think that at least with you start having these different environments that have like different almost different environments in a pipeline, and like I feel like then you start to get more to this ability to like be more agile and be deploying more often. And obviously there's Substrate itself has these like built-in upgrade mechanisms that are quite powerful as well. So I think that's also kind of part of the cool thing here is I think you just get to this place where you can kind of be moving like more quickly, and that's going to like result in kind of a competitive advantage, I think, right, for for us, but also for the whole kind of ecosystem relative to other ecosystems.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a good point. And like we also explained in a couple blog posts before that Moonriver is going to have the same integrations, the same technology, the same Ethereum compatibility that right now Moonbase Alpha has. So the next question from the community is how exactly can Moonriver facilitate the network governance?
Governance, yeah, and I wanted to make even just a final point almost on the last one, which is I mean I think a kind of an alternate question is so there's still these two, but like what's going to happen on each of them, right? Or like what's the idea of like what's supposed to go where? And this is something where I do see like different teams pursuing different ideas. So it could be that a team has the idea of deploying across both and kind of more along the idea I mentioned before of like, hey, let's deploy first here, like we kind of make we kind of have confidence then moving into like a deployment onto Moonbeam. But I do think what we've seen on Kusama is there might be teams that actually target just like Moonriver as their final destination. So that's kind of not the intent I was talking about before, but you know how it is when you create something, sometimes people use it in ways you weren't like intending. And so I see that happening on Kusama itself, where I mean, I see it this way, right? In some ways, like we're in the business of creating block space, right? Like that's the scarce resource that we have that like developers are trying to get access to. And so by having two different networks and two different like full sets of block space that are available, that kind of doubles like the amount of capacity that we have to bring to market. And then it could be that different use cases like go to different chains. So I mean, one thing I'm seeing on Kusama is that there's a lot of like NFT and even gaming activity that are happening on Kusama that may not need like the full economic security of what Polkadot can provide. But they still want all the features. So like it could be the case we start to see certain use cases, deploying to like different chains. I mean, specifically, we're talking about governance here, though. So I mean, the governance mechanisms will be exactly the same on both chains. Like, so we're obviously committed to kind of the on-chain governance systems that a lot of substrate chains are using. This really was Gav's kind of vision and concept, that like governance for key, kind of things like upgrades and kind of key protocol decisions should be on-chain and based on tokens. So we're bought into that to that idea. But I would say that the notable difference is that the citizenry, right? So like the token holder communities, like on both chains, are not going to be the same, and that was kind of intentional because we thought that basically like Moonriver is an opportunity for there to be kind of a different constituency, like a different set of token holders, and so there'll be a different set of like citizens that are kind of using these on-chain governance mechanisms on each of the chains, and I expect that will probably lead to also like potentially like different trajectories, like on a move forward basis.
Yeah, that'll be really interesting to see, right, as it unfolds. If different governance decisions are made different, if they're made differently on the different networks.
But but on this like token holder thing, that is something that I would stress, and I know that as you guys are kind of out kind of sharing information about this, that for Moonriver, it really was important for us to kind of have this like to have like a community-led aspect to it, right? So that's kind of why the token distribution like looks quite a bit different, and I think that that should be kind of exciting, like for people that want to engage, right? That they kind of are on equal footing with even like ourselves as a team or anyone else, basically.
Perfect. Thank you guys for your answers. So let's talk more about the Moonriver crowdloan now that we already gave an intro of what is a crowdloan and what is Moonriver. So the first question from the community here is like, can anyone participate in this crowdloan? Are there any specific requirements?
Yeah. So I mean, there is a sort of a flow that's being deployed for this, and as part of that, there's not a station, and there is some restrictions around country of residence and so forth, but otherwise it's generally open to anyone.
Perfect. Something to add here, Derek? I
was just going to say that there are going to be a few different ways to participate. So there is an application that the Moonbeam Foundation is creating that like will allow people to participate, but we are also working on some partnerships, with some partner organizations, right? So there will be kind of these other ways that you can kind of come in from other partner platforms as well.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Good. That's a great point.
Yeah, and that actually was the next question. What will be the crowdloan mechanism? Will the crowdloan be conducted on Moonbeam's platform or by a third parties? I don't know if you guys want to go more in detail.
Yeah, so the kind of the DApp that's being created will be kind of like hosted like on the Moonbeam Foundation website, but these partners and they're still we're still working on like a couple of them. These would be like established, kind of exchange partners that like have existing platforms that, would have integrations in so that you can, from those platforms kind of participate. So yeah, I think it's a little bit TBD on what that final kind of list will look like, but we should have like more information on that soon, given that, things are happening quite soon.
Correct. Perfect. So the next question from the community here is, how long will my Kusama be staked? And here I just want to make a clarification that it should be locked. So I think here this will be a great opportunity to also start explaining what is the difference between staking and locking KSMs. And then we can talk more about like the details of the timing of the lock period and also the vesting schedule.
Yeah, I'll just jump in like first, and then I'll hand it over to you, Aaron. But
sure.
I mean, the first thing I would just say is that Kathy already kind of said, oh well, it says staking, but we say locking. So yeah, just to kind of clarify, right? So we just try to like be a little bit specific and deliberate about terminology because it's quite it's a complicated system and it's easy to get confused. So we tend not to use the word staking with reference to the crowdloan activity to distinguish it from just staking, the regular staking function that's on the relay chain, right? So like as a KSM holder on the relay chain, you can just stake, you can nominate like different like validators, and then there's like basically staking kind of like rewards that you get from just staking tokens on the relay chain. So that's one thing that exists, and obviously there's a whole set of tools and the whole market of all these validators on the relay chain. So that's a whole thing. And then, we just don't use the word staking. So then we say, it's kind of being a contributor to, or kind of locking like into a crowd loan would be the words we use to describe, that activity, just so people don't get confused. But go ahead. Why don't I hand it off to you, Aaron? I know that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a really important point. And I think, in preparation for that, if you go to the Moonbeam Foundation website, it kind of walks through what you can expect and so forth. But one of the things specifically is you need to unbond your KSM before you can contribute. Meaning, so it specifically can't be using for staking or governance or whatever. And so that's a really important point. So was the question, so I think the question was how long it'll be locked for. And I think we touched on this a little bit earlier, but, essentially Derek talked about the two outcomes that are possible. If we win an auction and we get a Parachain slot, then we're going for the maximum, which is 48 weeks. Projects have the option of sort of which, I forget what they call them. I don't want to say slot because I think that's for the Parachains, but you can go for a quarter of that or half of that or 3/4. They're sort of in those 12-week increments. We're going for the full 48 weeks. So if we win an auction, then they'll be locked for that period of time. If we fail to secure the auction during our campaign, then at the end of the campaign, at the campaign end date, then the KSM will be unlocked. I don't know if there was more to the question. Hopefully that answered it.
Yeah, I think you answered it perfectly. So the next question is actually a little bit related because since the crowd loan term is a little complicated and the process is not so clear for all the community, some people from the community ask, why do we have to participate in the crowd loan? What are the benefits or incentives? Is it better to participate in the crowd loan or wait to the token when it's public and it's already in exchanges and we can find it easily?
Yeah, I mean, I can just give some thoughts here and off to Aaron afterwards, but basically, I mean, there's different ways to look at this. As to why contribute to a crowd loan, obviously there's non kind of economically, let's leave the economic rationality out of the equation. Then of course it's just, if you want to support our project and want to support Moonriver becoming a parachain, those are reasons. But if you go more into just this, let's just put on our totally economically rational hat, right? So it's kind of what is the best outcome for me as a KSM holder? I think the one way to think of it would be this, that the thing, so you have KSM, and then there's two things. There's really only one thing at this point you can do with it. You can stake it, basically, right? And then there's some amount of rewards that you would get for staking it. And then as an alternate, you can contribute to a crowd loan. If you contribute to a crowd loan, then obviously the rewards are generally going to be in the form of the project team's token. And so really the comparison on one end of the balance is the staking rewards that you would have gotten had you staked. That's kind of one thing that one benefit. And then that's kind of weighed against the rewards that the project teams are putting up for having locked the token. So I feel that's, I guess, a little bit of the rational model to kind of consider these things is does it make more sense to stake, or does it make more sense to contribute towards a crowd loan? I'll hand it over to Aaron, but that's kind of one thought I want to give people.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly it. I mean, obviously, I mean, the other side of it is while it's locked up, you can't transfer your KSM because they're locked. I mean, it's really about balancing those things. There is the token reward, which I don't know if there may be other questions further down, but we feel that ours is quite generous, I think, compared to other projects, and we'll get a lot of the mover token into the hands of the community. So.
Excellent. So the next question is actually from what you said before, Aaron, that when we have these crowd loans, the KSMs are not like a loan. They are going to be in a specific place that are going to be used for the actions. So the community is asking for security purposes, how well is the Moonriver crowd loan secure against hacking? Because the funds are going to be locked for a long period of time.
Sure. Well, I mean, one thing that I think that's really important to understand is that this is a module of parity, and so I mean, obviously, you're going to get the security of the relay chain I think with that regards.
Yeah,
you know,
I'm.
secure.
I would say it's
Derek?
correct. I mean, basically, like, you know, the Crowdloan module is like, as Aaron says, is like on the relay chain, right? So this is like not code we created. This is not like any dependency on like anything related to Moonriver. It's like, you know, when you're like participating in Crowdloan, you're like performing. It's like staking like on the relay chain. It's like another function that's just on the relay chain. So this is like code that Parity created. This is secured by like the validator set that like is on like the relay chain. I think, you know, in terms of like Polkadot ecosystem, it doesn't get like better than that. That's kind of like, you know, that's, you're as secure as you can, as you can be. Now, I think for the pieces that are under our control here, you know, those would be more the dApp, some of these partners, you know, like obviously have kind of the interface where like you would kind of come through which you would come in to like be able to like perform these actions. And and so that's where we've been spending, you know, obviously time to make sure that those components are going to be have been created like in a secure way. And you know, that's something that you know, it's like one of our like company like values and like foundational principles is kind of like to make sure that like the software we're creating is you know, secure and reliable, and so forth.
And I think you know, without getting into too many details, I mean, I think as any sort of responsible and, you know, major legitimate project, we're involving, you know, external security auditors to ensure that.
Perfect. So the next question is a very common question in the community. That is, when is the Crowdloan gonna start?
Yeah, that's
when someone finds out, I'd like to know.
Yeah, I mean, so I'd say that obviously this is something that is, you know, is not under our control. So this is something that Parity is going to decide, like when, or you know, perhaps Web3 Foundation, Parity are going to decide like when to activate like the crowd loans. We don't like, you know, I think sometimes people think that we have some kind of like privileged information, but like we really don't. I think sometimes we're in the same boat as like all the rest of you guys in terms of just, you know, we'll learn like via Twitter or whatever, like when like you know, people at Parity kind of like say. That being said, I mean, it's obvious that in the last like 2 to 3 weeks, you know, there's been like you know, like it's game time now, basically, right? So I think this is kind of the message that was sent out is like, get ready, like this is about to happen. And you know, so my anticipation is that like I think we could see like the notice for these for things to start, you know, happening, let's say as soon as next week. I mean, it could be like coming up soon here, next week, the week after, and then I'm pretty sure that this notice that like, hey, these are going to start. There's definitely going to be at least like a 7-day, that'll happen 7 days before they actually start. And the reason for that is that the unbonding period, like on the relay chain right now on Kusama, is 7 days. So I don't think they're going to say, okay, it's going to start now, and then people are only then going to like hear about it and try to unbond. Well, they'll miss like the whole first auction then. So I'm pretty sure that there's going to be at least a 7-day notice period. So yeah, so I think that it could be as soon as like, let's say a couple of weeks from now, like that things would actually start. That, you know, we you know, we will see like what you know, what comes down from you know, from Parity and Web3 on this.
Correct. Yeah, we all have our alerts on the Twitter handle of Polkadot Party and all the teams. So make sure when are these news coming up. So our next questions are related to the Moonriver Crowdloan and the community. The first one is, how do you plan to distribute the tokens among the community? For example, how many tokens will be available per user? Because it's important to also consider to prevent the accumulation of tokens in only one person or a small group of people.
Yeah, I don't know, Aaron, if you like, but I can give a couple thoughts here that like, you know, we obviously are using, so the Crowdloan, you know, there's like this existential like, you know, goal to like the Crowdloan, which is, hey, like we need to like actually win an auction to secure a slot to be a Parachains. So that's one goal. But I do think that, you know, as Aaron mentioned, I mean, we're putting up like a fairly substantial amount of the network on this first Crowdloan. We are putting more than like is necessary to just like become a parachain, right? I mean, we could put much less, you know, to be a parachain. I think the idea is that, you know, this Crowdloan can serve as like a token distribution mechanism to, you know, to like, you know, to get tokens into the hands of like the community. And so that's what's informed a lot of the strategy and the kind of the plan from the Moonbeam Foundation is, you know, to kind of use this, you know, this Crowdloan mechanism to achieve that purpose. You know, in terms of like the you know, the distribution itself, I mean, this is where, you know, we wanted to do something that was, you know, kind of fair, right? So, you know, and Aaron, I don't know if you want to kind of go into the details of like of that
Sure.
like itself.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, you know, for those of you that aren't aware, it's the reward is 30% of the Genesis tokens, which you know, will be distributed proportionally. So, you know, you take an individual's contribution and its proportion to the overall total contributions that are accumulated, you know, up until we, you know, we win an auction, and then that proportion of those 3 million Genesis tokens will be the amount that any individual gets. And this is detailed in the on the foundation website. There's a Crowdloan link at the top, and if you kind of go through there, it's sort of the math is kind of all spelled out. But that's kind of how we wanted to do a that kind of distribution. And the way it works is, I think we're going to vest 30%. More or less right away once we win once we're live and we've enabled transfers, and then the remaining 70% of, you know, any particular participant's allocation will be distributed sort of on a linear form over the course of the 48 weeks. Hopefully,
Perfect.
I got all that math right.
I think that's right. I mean, the one technical detail is that, like, you know, it is going to be a claims process. So, like, you know, beyond that initial distribution, then, like, you know, as a user, you can go and claim any accrued rewards, like, as often as you like. But there is kind of a claims process. So there'll be like a transaction you would submit on like Moonriver to be able to claim like any accrued.
Yeah, rewards. That's a great point. It's kind of a pull, and on the onus is on the participant, not a push.
Yeah, this was done, you know, with scalability like in mind, basically, right? So we want, you know, it's like a more scalable approach to have it be kind of a pull claims based kind of process versus trying to like push out. This is more on the technical implementation side.
Perfect. And like you, Aaron, said, it's 30% that is going to be allocated, that is allocated already for that community. So that community, I think, is very impressed, like I am, because of this allocation. So the question here is, like, what is the idea of not allocating any mover to the team? Because people says, like, why? The team is like working so hard, and so why? Like, can you guys explain that? And I would like to mention here, like, can we explain also why is Moonriver the community-led network?
Yeah, I can give some color here. You know, obviously speaking for the team. So I think, you know, I think it's one of these things where, you know, we wanted to just kind of have like a clean slate. I think, where you know, obviously the you know, kind of the participants that like in like Moonbeam are just like different, and then it was kind of like, I think that, you know, sometimes the simplest is to just like have a clear slate, basically, you know, like rather than you know, I think the other choice would have been to like, you know, mirror things, right? So that like it was like a mirror distribution from like a Moonbeam. But, you know, back to that idea that like, you know, we believe that the Genesis, like, you know, holders and kind of like where the distribution is will have like a big effect on like the community that's like around, you know, both projects, we believe, and like what the future trajectory is. So we really see this as kind of like a, you know, an opportunity to just try like a different approach, basically. I think it's in the spirit of Kusama, like in a way. And I know Aaron, you know, after just, you know, in discussions with Aaron, you know, he kind of, you know, agreed with that, you know, with that approach that, you know, I think it's kind of in keeping with the spirit of Kusama. It's like, you know, an opportunity to kind of expand like the entire community, because we kind of have this community that will really span across both of these networks. And yeah, we wanted to, you know, it's kind of one of those things where we don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but we want, you know, I think we all want to give it a try, basically.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, it really, you know, speaks to, we want this to be really community driven, and, you know, obviously a lot of the governance will then be in the hands of the community, and I think this, you know, this really gives a lot of credibility to that narrative, right? That this really is about the community and a community driven project.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for your answers. So let's talk about like what's going to happen after the Moonriver crowdloan happens. Once a parachain is secured, what is next for Moonriver? When are you planning to release Moonriver after the crowdloan?
Yeah, I can speak to this because this is like something that we've been working quite heavily on, just from like this technical implementation perspective. Because that's kind of on the PureStick side, we're kind of that's kind of like the main focus is just like the actual engineering and technical implementation. So we have actually, I think we just recently put up some pages that explain like what our like launch process looks like. So obviously, kind of the first step is, in order to launch, we need a parachain slot. So without a parachain slot, there is no launch. So, the crowd loan, a lot of the pieces we've talked about, so far are about kind of securing that spot. Once we have that spot, we will have kind of this initial runtime. Like actually, as part of the registration process to even run the crowd loan, you're kind of saying, hey, here's like the code that I want to be like the initial code that gets like, that is like deployed. And so we have that but what we've decided to do is, again, we kind of have this philosophy of like just, safety and security like has to come first, particularly when you're moving to like, value bearing kind of scenarios. So we've kind of devised a 4-phase, a kind of a multi-phase approach where, to start, we basically have feature flagged a lot of the critical subsystems like in Moonriver. And at the very beginning, they're all turned off basically. So like the first thing that like would get like deployed on a successful like auction like win via our crowd loan is basically this thing that kind of launches, but is can't really do much, right? So it's going to be like producing blocks. Blocks will be getting finalized, and we want to just observe then, right? It's like, okay, this thing that is just kind of like a base, it has kind of all the features turned off. Like, is it functioning like properly? Like, are blocks being produced like the way we expect? Are they being finalized by the relay chain validators? So we want to just make sure that that's the case. And then we have these like successive phases of like flipping on like the the light switches like kind of one by one, right? So the next step is to bring in kind of because in that beginning, like PureStake ourselves will be running like all the collators, right? So like we are basically, it's like totally centralized setup, like we're just running all the infrastructure. And then in the next phase, we'll be basically like inviting in all of our like collator, like our network of collators, right? So there's quite a few like collators now. I think on Moonbase Alpha, our testnet, I think we have all 32 active slots are full. So we have 32 independent collators that are helping us produce blocks. We want to invite that same collator set over to basically like start producing blocks like on Moonriver. And so then we've moved from a centralized setup to like a a decentralized setup in terms of the infrastructure, like the block production. And again, observe that everything is going okay, that that like things are running smoothly. Then the next step would be to activate governance, like all the on-chain governance features. And again, we want to make sure that that's smooth, that we everything is running smoothly. We'll be doing kind of like upgrades at each step of the way, right? Of like the using these upgrade features that are part of Substrate. And then the final step would be the removal of like the pseudo key that like allows like that allows like for centralized control, to remove that away. That kind of lets governance be like the only mechanism that's that's actually governing the chain to be in force. And then the last step would be to activate transfers and like the EVM basically. And so once that step is done, then that is kind of the point of no return basically. So then like the network is launched. It's it's in the hands of the token holders basically to decide like what the path forward is. So yeah, I think you're going to see that play out where there's going to be these successive steps, and we'll be kind of telling people, okay, here we're at step 1, now we're moving to step 2. I mean, so there'll be obviously further communications, but there'll be this kind of process that unfolds once we win that will end in kind of the, hey, now we're like fully launched, right? And then that's when things like transfers of tokens would be like possible.
Excellent. And all this information was released recently in our website. Katie shared a link here on the chat. So if you guys want to see more in details what's going to be the Moonriver launch process, we invite you to visit this page. I don't know, Aaron, if you have anything to add here.
I was going to say the same thing. I mean, it's pretty interesting. I mean, obviously, the team spent a lot of time thinking this through because it is there's a lot to it, and we want to make sure that it goes smoothly. So if you're at all interested in how the sausage is made, I think there's a lot of detail in that link, and so I encourage you to check it out.
Yeah, and I would say this is like in line if people in the that are kind of in the community here, like we're following along when, for example, Kusama itself launched. I think Parity followed like a similar kind of incremental step process, right? So just, with safety and kind of security like in mind.
All right, so we have one more question from the ambassadors that is based on the ambassador community, actually. Are you planning to make any ambassador token allocations, or what's the plan for this community?
Yeah, I know. Obviously, it's a good question. I know that many of you may be interested in that. I think that we're not quite ready to to talk about specific any specific kind of plans there like on this call. But obviously, as kind of some of our key community members, we obviously want to figure out like a way to like appreciate you guys. So I think we're just like not quite ready to to talk about that right now. But I think in keeping with the spirit of community-led and kind of folks that have showed particular interest like in our project, we will figure out something.
Absolutely, and we're very grateful to have you guys here with us. We have some additional questions the community put here, so let's talk. The first question from Roman: will Moonriver and Kusama work at its 100% and all functions will used, or after switching to Polkadot will be there other functions and capabilities? I think that this is more talking about like if the capabilities are going to be different from Moonriver and Moonbeam.
Yeah, I think it could be the case that there are like new features that will be on Moonriver first. Because the idea would be that anything that we create in terms of features that are new and proposed to be included, would like target like Moonriver first, and then like once they've proven themselves there, then they would move to Moonbeam. So I think that is, it'll definitely be the case that there's always, if you want the latest features, you may actually want to be on Moonriver, right? Like, or if you want to kind of, I know some software is often like this, where you have like the stable release and then you have kind of the more cutting edge like release, right? So Moonriver will be the more cutting edge like release, and but if you want kind of the stability and like the most tried and true thing, then like it's Moonbeam might be the better place basically.
Perfect. Okay, so the next question is related to it is like, after the successful launch of Moonbeam on Polkadot, what will happen to Moonriver?
Yeah, so it is. We plan to keep that like we want like both of these networks will run like in parallel, like will be long lived. Like there's that is definitely the concept, and yeah, I mean so there's not some kind of thing where then once Polkadot deployment is up and running that somehow like Moonriver goes away. Like that's not the case. So these are like long lived networks. We anticipate them being around for a long time.
Yeah, no, and to go back to one of the points Derek made earlier, I mean, we think that having the two will help with velocity in terms of bringing innovation to the ecosystem, and so it's really important that Moonriver continue, in perpetuity.
Absolutely, and also like what happened with Kusama and Polkadot, there are like some projects that are only, for example, in Kusama right now and not in Polkadot. So we'll see if that's the same case of Moonriver, and we have like some different projects in the different networks. So yeah, thank you guys.
It's a good point, because I think it's like, yeah, you can ask us like, well, what our I mean, so yeah, we have some ideas, but in the end, like these are like permissionless networks. So I think it's more what all of you think like should be the case, like, and so I think as people deploy things and do different things, like it's a little bit of like, we'll see what happens, right?
Exciting though.
Yeah, it is. And actually, yesterday we released the Moonbase Alpha V8, and this question is related to it, because with this release, now we are feature complete to launch Moonriver, which is very exciting. So the question here is like, how much time is needed to test Moonriver before the launch of Moonbeam? What additional features need to be added to Moonriver or Moonbase to launch Moonbeam?
Yeah, so I mean, when we say like feature complete for Moonriver, that's not like and like now our job is done, now we go to the beach or something. I mean, so that's just like we've achieved like the minimum.
Not at all.
We've achieved the minimum feature set we think to have like a viable chain, and like there's a lot of other things that are like in our roadmap that like we need to do. Some of them are relatively low level. Some of them I'll just highlight some. So for example, like we've been studying like EIP 1559 quite closely. That's like an upgrade that's coming shortly to Ethereum. And as part of, our whole strategy, we need to maintain and, we want to be as Ethereum compatible as possible. So we need to basically do like our own implementation of EIP 1559 because, all of the partners we're working with are going to kind of expect that behavior in some sense, right? Like in their applications, certainly like the front ends, like MetaMask and other things are going to start to like rely on that. So that's something, but like it, we can't quite just implement it like, exactly the way it's going to be on Ethereum, because our, things like work a little bit differently, like especially the infrastructure layer, like on Moonbeam. So we have like an effort underway to figure out like what our EIP 1.59 like implementation is going to look like. I'm just giving one example of many, right, of the kinds of things that aren't there now, but like need to be there, soon. I would say this, like a lot of our effort right now has been on just having this like Ethereum like environment complete and running in Substrate and kind of as a parachain. But the power of Polkadot is really around these like cross-chain integrations. That's really like, I think, one of the main reasons why we like chose to build in Polkadot in the first place. And that's largely untapped. So I think that there's a lot of work that we have in the design or kind of like underway that's like has to do with enabling cross-chain integrations. And so those things will be coming, in particular, like token, like movement integrations, is the first set, but there's a bunch where we're going to, have a whole bunch of pre-compiles that we're adding to, the EVM implementations to allow developers to start using this like cross-chain integration functionality that's, I think, uniquely enabled by, both Kusama and Polkadot. So that's another set of features. So a ton of like, feature work, some of it like lower level infrastructural, some of it developer oriented features. That's going to continue, as we even post like Moonriver and, into like Moonbeam for sure.
Perfect. Thank you for your answer, Derek. So the next questions are pretty much more to get more details on the Crowdloan. So the first one from Shukri Hamid is there a limit on the amount of KSMs that we can contribute?
I believe it's uncapped. That's right, Derek. We're not putting a cap on any individual contributor. There's a minimum. I think it's very like a fraction, maybe a tenth of a KSM or something like that. But
yeah, I think that minimum is actually enforced on the relay chain. So that's even not our choice. That's just something that's like in the Crowdloan module itself, basically, like on the relay chain. There's an enforced minimum contribution of a tenth of a KSM.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. So the next question is also from Shukri Hamid is, which wallets can we use? Polkadot ES or Polka Wallet? Could you give us a little more detail on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main reference that we're using, like in kind of the testing of our DApp, is Polkadot.js, so that's certainly the case. But I know that we also are like verifying kind of compatibility with like other wallets. We do have a number of other wallet providers that are supporting, that are supporting like Moonbeam, and on for the on the relay chain side that have like Crowdloan support. So we are like looking to see like which ones work, but I would say that probably the main line for us and the thing that the developers have been using and kind of is the main line for testing would be Polkadot.js. That's for like the DApp side, right? Obviously for the partner side it's different, right, where there's no wallet necessarily. You're just using the partner platform.
Perfect. And more information about like what do you need to have ready before the Crowdloan is also on the Crowdloan's link that I shared before in the chat. We'll share it again, but if you guys want to know more about the process and the checklist of things that you need to have ready, I think that this page is very helpul. So let's go to
notably it's unlocked KSM and like you do need this like a Moonriver target address. So I think we have some tutorials on both of those things, but you have a few things you need to have when you enter into the process.
Correct. Perfect. So the next question is, how many mover tokens will be received for each KSM? Is there any additional bonus tokens for early deposits from that community?
So I think I got into the math before. If I understand the question correctly, it's really how we're going to be distributing the reward tokens based on how much KSM was contributed. So, again, just quickly, it's the fraction of your contribution as compared to the total contributions that are raised as part of our campaign, and then you take that fraction of the 3 million Genesis tokens, and that's how many mover tokens it'll be.
Yeah, so I think just specifically, it's like there is no benefit to like being the first person to contribute, like but as maybe it's worth it, just a little aside here that I mentioned that like each like auction will be like 1 week, like for these first ones that are coming out, and so I think even within the 1 week period, there's different phases. So the first 2 days, if I'm not mistaken, I think the first 2 days of the 7-day like auction is like referred to as, I think it's like it's when it's like open. And so like if you contribute anytime within the first 2 days, like your contribution is guaranteed to be kind of, let's call it like counted towards like the final, auction bid. But in the last 5 days, that's where like the auction can actually end like at any point, like in that 5 days. And this is this like candle auction mechanic that Parity came up with to try to avoid like last minute sniping or kind of like last minute like movement. So so I think that it's one of these things where like I think if you contribute anytime within the first 2 days, that's probably the best, because then that your contribution helps support like 100% guaranteed to help support like Moonriver like becoming a parachain. But as to like when the contribution happens, like there's no like benefit to like being first or second or third kind of thing.
Perfect. And we also try to be very fair with our community. So I think that that's a very smart thing that we have now for that crowd loan. Okay, so thank you for the answer, guys. So the next question is, what happens after a few years with the crowd loans and Kusama Parachains where all allocated tokens are already distributed? Will there be crowd loans without rewards for the participants?
That's a good question. So I can chime in a little bit here. So, I mean, there's a couple of things actually that, originally we had the thought that like, hey, like maybe there can be another crowd loan, like at the end of the 48 weeks, we'll do, there'll be another crowd loan to like help renew ourselves. That's actually not going to be something that is encouraged or recommended. So, in discussions with Parity, what we figured out is that they really intend like the crowd loan to just be an initial bootstrapping mechanism, but not like the maintenance mechanism. So not the way that you would renew. So there's like an as yet to be determined thing that would be the renewal process. It may look similar-ish to like a crowd loan, but it's not going to be the same basically. It'll likely be something that is on like Moonriver itself in this case, not on the relay chain. Because I think that's kind of the motivation that Parity kind of told me is they're like, you know what? Like this crowd loan stuff is on the relay chain now, but we don't even like that. Like it's not supposed to be there. Like the relay chain is supposed to be like not have any advanced functionality on it. It's supposed to be like as light and as dumb as possible, and all of the logic is supposed to be on the parachains. So so I think that's a TBD item where like in this, within the 48 weeks, like once we're in, that is like a critical task will be like, how do we figure out how to like, we want to stay in this apartment. It's nice. Like, how do we like figure out how to stay here basically? So that's like a TBD, and that's not just us, that's for everyone, right? So like, I don't think anyone like knows exactly the answer to this, right now.
But of course, it's obviously Parity's intention that they want important projects like Moonbeam and so forth to, find a permanent home, and so it's not like they're trying to kick us out of that apartment, right?
That's right. And the other part of the question, just to comment on, is that this like bootstrapping, like using platform tokens, obviously is something that like helps the project kind of like get going, but it's not like something that's sustainable like on like the very like long run, at least in the same form as like the this first one. So that is where like part of the like inflation of the system does go to like this something we're calling the Parachain bond reserve, which is an on-chain like managed set of funds. So basically the strategy is that we have these kind of like bootstrapping efforts early in the life of the network, but like over time it is basically like all of the token holders, because when you kind of have inflation going, it's basically like anyone who's a token holder is getting slightly diluted. So like basically the idea is that like over time everyone kind of like equally kind of shoulders the burden of like the cost of like a parachain renewal. So this like parachain bond reserve will accrue like enough native like a relay chain asset to be able to be self-sovereign, right? So that the chain itself, on-chain governance can basically directly like auction bid and kind of be a permanent, like have a permanent lease like on the slot.
Perfect. Thank you for your answer, guys. So the last question that is from Rami. Are Kusama and Polkadot really Canary networks where you can start creating a project before launching it on ERC20? Is it Moonbeam's job to provide decent, fast, and secure syncing across all of these networks?
So the networks were, what were the networks again? Kusama and
Polkadot. Yeah, if they are really Canary networks. I think there's a lot to clarify here.
Yeah, well, I think this Canary network term is often used for projects that are for Kusama and for, I guess, parachains that are on Kusama. And so, yeah, I think that like Moonriver is a Canary network in a way, right? Because we are, at least the intention is to deploy new features there first. And so just like a canary in a coal mine, I guess if there's like a, if the bird kind of like, has a problem, then like the miners know that there's like an issue, right? It's like, so I think that is true. But as we said before, I think that, and this is something that a parity found as well, I think that with Kusama itself, that, these networks have a way of expressing their own will and kind of heading in like their own direction, depending on who the community are that are around them. So, I fully expect there to be some surprises and maybe some things that we don't expect.
Right, awesome. And there was one more question from here that is also an ambassador that asked, what are going to be the exchanges where the Crowdloan is going to be available?
Yeah, go ahead, Aaron. I don't think we can comment on that, but at least right now, but go ahead, Aaron. I know that's
yeah. I mean, it's it's obviously something that we're working on exploring. I mean, obviously it will be available on some exchanges, but yeah, I don't know if we're in a position to really comment on that at this point.
Awesome. Yeah, so this has been a great opportunity for us to talk about the Crowdloan details and like respond to a lot of questions. Like that community said, there are a lot of questions that we can answer right now and other ones that we are waiting for the parity team or even like for our team to like define. So thank you everyone for being with us today. It's been very helpful and we love to have this connection with our ambassadors. Thank you, Derek, and thank you, Aaron, for being with us today. So yeah, I hope that everybody has a very good day and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks
very much for
putting it together. Thanks to all of you ambassadors, like for all your work.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye-bye.